What's up, beautiful people? My name is Brian, and welcome to part 2 of this series where I ask French speakers how they got so fluent in French without ever moving to France. Part 1 of the series is already up, and it was delivered fully in French, while this video is going to be mostly in English. So if you haven't yet, please feel free to check that out. If you got something useful out of this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please let me know what you think in the comments down below, including what kind of content you'd like to see in the future. And with all that said, let's get into it. Hi, today I'm here with...
I'm Rohan.
Est-ce que tu pourrais te présenter en français?
Oui, bien sûr. Moi, c'est Rohan. Je vis ici à New York, mais j'ai grandi plutôt à Denver. Et oui, on s'est retrouvés ici dans Central Park et ils m'ont demandé de faire un entretien et ça a l'air bon.
Ok. Ça fait combien de temps que tu parles français?
Puis, c'est un peu compliqué. J'ai commencé vraiment à l'école quand j'avais 10 ans. Alors, ça fait comme 15 ans, mais en vrai, je l'ai laissé de côté pendant plusieurs années. Alors, techniquement, ça fait 15 ans que je parle français, mais c'est vraiment comme je l'ai repris en 2020, après plusieurs années de ne rien faire.
D'accord. Et t'as quel âge du coup?
J'ai 27 ans.
Oh wow. Ok. Maintenant, on va juste changer en anglais parce que je trouve que ce serait plus facile. So, Rohan, you said you started learning French at 10. Was it at school? Did you go to a French immersion program? What was it?
No, it's just like middle school French classes. I guess now that I do the math, it was actually 17 years ago. I did, 3 years of French in school, and then I would read a little bit in high school and college, but I really didn't touch it until 2020, and then at that point, I was living in a bunch of different places. I decided it would be fun to go to France. So I kind of, started taking back up again. You know, by high school, I could probably have a conversation, but I wouldn't say I was really fluent. I remember getting to France and not really being able to do much more than find my way around and order a coffee. So it's been a process since then for sure.
Okay. And were you only just visiting France? Did you move there for a period?
Yeah, it was a couple of longer visits. So I spent probably 3-4 months between 2022, 2023. Each in France and then Montreal. My sister lives in Montreal, so I get to visit a lot, which is nice. Yeah.
Okay. What was it that allowed you to finally become 100% comfortable speaking French?
Just doing it, making mistakes, fucking up, really, I find that there's no way around just putting in the time and forcing yourself into situations that are uncomfortable. I also kind of developed a method from doing other languages. So I know that if I have the basic grammar, then I can start to kind of learn vocabulary on my own and then test it out. So concretely, I did a lot of classes on italki. I think having the one-on-one tutoring was really helpful. And then, just I always have a little notebook. I have it right here. And then I write down new words everywhere I go all the time whenever I'm speaking it. And then just make sure to learn them. And it's just a natural thing. You just have to put in the hours, I think.
So for some people that want to learn French but don't know where to start, what would you recommend?
I would say, it depends on the type of learner. Some people really will want a teacher who can walk them through it from the beginning. Some people want to do it on their own. So I think it helps to know what works for you. But if you really have no idea, I would say it's nice to start with the personal connection, a friendship, or a teacher. So if I were talking to someone who had no idea how, knew they just wanted to learn French, I would say either, go move to Montreal is a good place because people will give you the time of day in French, but it can also help you in English. Or find a good tutor, teacher, someone you connect with, who you can make a regular commitment to see, because it's just easier if it's part of your routine, I think.
Okay. Would you say that the bulk of your time learning how to speak French was spent with friends or with tutors?
I would say it's probably 90% on my own, actually. It'll be reading books, learning vocabulary. There's a great app called Language Reactor that I have installed on my Chrome. And so I can just do whatever I do on the web in whatever language I'm learning at the time. And then I just turn it into flashcards and make sure to do those. And I think there's no other way to really just learn vocabulary. And that's often the hardest and most time consuming part. So yeah, mostly alone. And then the rest is just having friends, having conversations, traveling, whatnot. I think it doesn't feel like work, which is why I'm able to actually do it.
Okay. So your French was already at a good enough level where, the friends that you made in France and Montreal, like didn't immediately revert back to speaking English when you talked to them, right?
Yeah, that's a big hurdle I found, especially with French. Other languages, like people are excited to speak with you. Like I think like Portuguese and Turkish, like people are like, oh my God, you like know a couple words. Okay, like let's do it. French is probably the hardest to get people to stay in French with you. And so either you say like, please like speak French with me. I'm learning, and like hopefully someone has the patience. The more rural the place, the more likely people have the patience. Or like, yeah, you just have to be at high enough of a level to have a bit of a conversation. And it can be hard to get over that hurdle. I've heard it's also really difficult in like German and like very, very difficult in Dutch. So it's not impossible by any means, but it's definitely something to pay attention to in the early stages and not get discouraged if like people constantly want to switch back to you in English. If you're like a tourist in Paris after a couple of weeks of learning French, like you'll get there eventually.
Okay. How much time have you spent cumulatively in Montreal and in France, just to give the audience an idea?
Sure. Probably 3-4 months in each in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So not that much time, actually. Really not that much time.
Yeah, less than a year total in French-speaking environments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it is doable, even without moving to a French-speaking country for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would add, a lot of people go thinking they'll learn just by being there, but they don't get over the hurdle of actually having friendships, conversations, extended interactions in the language. Like I've had that where, like I lived in Vietnam for a year, barely learned any Vietnamese. Okay. And I, speak languages much better, even than like my French, but that I like barely been to the countries. So it definitely helps, but immersion isn't everything. It's big, and after a certain point, you do need it, but I don't think it's everything the way that some people would have you think.
Okay. Yeah. 2 last questions. How many other languages do you speak?
5, and then a bunch of others that I've studied to like some smaller extent. Yeah, I had a job that let me live wherever I wanted in the world, so I got to live in like 30 different countries. So
what do you work as?
I was writing like Spark Notes actually. They didn't know where I was. They didn't care where I was. It was a great time. Yeah, I don't do it anymore. Now I'm a law student. Okay. But yeah.
Last question. What would you recommend French learners not to do?
Oh, I think the big thing is there's a big difference in the way like people's attitude, their affect. Don't get down when people like scoff at you for making a mistake or you feel like they're not very nice. I think that is something I've seen with a lot of my friends who are learning French. Even with my sister in Montreal, she's like, just people have this attitude when I make a mistake in French, so I switch to English. And I think it can be very easy, especially to Americans who are expecting smiles and like sunny personalities. It can be easy for us to just let that like make us think we're less than and that like we're not doing the work we need to and that it's hopeless. And it's not. It's really like the person doesn't hate you. It's just a difference in emotional expression. And once you get used to that and figure it out, then I think it becomes a lot easier to deal with the day-to-day like the consequences of the little mistakes you make in the language, because it just looks totally different in different places. Like in Brazil, you can say a sentence that is completely wrong and people will be like, amazing, you're great, you speak perfect Portuguese. And in France, you get one gender wrong and like people are mad. So you just have to not let that get to your head.
Yeah. Thank you, Rohan. You're a natural at this.
Oh,
yeah, you said a lot of great things.
Cool.
Oh my God.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ouais, c'était vraiment